Well, another blow to a region near the Canada-U.S. border. Windsor is already on tenterhooks with the auto industry and Donald Trump's tariff crosshairs. Bottles Crown Royal, an iconic Canadian whiskey with a storied history, is closing and shifting work to south of the border.
It was supposed to be just another corporate announcement. Diageo, the parent company of Crown Royal, confirmed it would close its bottling plant in Amherstburg, Ontario in February, putting about 160 people out of work. The official explanation was supply chain efficiency, moving closer to American consumers. But Ontario Premier Doug Ford turned that decision into something far bigger.
That's what they could do. And I think everyone else should do the same thing. Start supporting companies that make whiskey here by Ontario people. That's what we need to do, is support each other.
In front of cameras, Ford uncapped a bottle of Crown Royal and poured it out. The act was simple but powerful. To Canadians, it captured frustration with jobs disappearing across the border. To Americans watching from the sidelines, it showed that Trump's tariff war had created a climate where even iconic Canadian brands were caught in the crossfire. Ford's message was unmistakable. He would not stay silent as Ontario families paid the price. Ford's protest went viral not because of whiskey, but because of what it represented. Trump had promised tariffs would bring jobs back to the United States. Instead, they fueled anger in Canada and handed Ford the stage to humiliate Trump on live television. By turning a business decision into political theater, Ford outmaneuvered the U.S. president in the arena Trump values most, public image. While Prime Minister Mark Carney continues to lead Canada's federal response with diplomacy and strategy, Ford's blunt defiance adds another layer. He became the pit bull outside the negotiating room, showing Trump that Canadian leaders can speak directly to the public on both sides of the border with raw emotion. For Trump, who thrives on dominating headlines, seeing a Canadian premier take control of the narrative was a humiliation. Calls for a boycott of Crown Royal quickly followed Ford's stunt. Some Ontario lawmakers argued it was time to pull the brand from store shelves, just as the province did earlier this year with American whiskey when U.S. tariffs hit Canadian goods. The move resonated because it symbolized Canadians taking matters into their own hands. Yet the reality is complex. Diageo still employs more than 500 people across Canada, with major facilities in Quebec and Manitoba. According to the company, its operations support nearly 10,000 jobs nationwide, from bottling to distribution to hospitality. Roughly 80% of the grains used in Crown Royal come from Canadian farms, especially in Manitoba. A sweeping boycott could harm Canadian workers more than corporate executives. But in political terms, the message mattered more than the mechanics. Ford had transformed Crown Royal into a rallying point. He showed that Canada could punch back, even if the strike was symbolic. And in doing so, he made Trump look less like a strong negotiator and more like the cause of instability spilling across the border. The Crown Royal episode unfolded just as a U.S. federal appeals court ruled that much of Trump's tariff program was unlawful. Trump has vowed to appeal to the Supreme Court, doubling down on a strategy that has already divided his own country and alienated allies. For Canada, this legal uncertainty underscores the importance of staying firm. Ford's dramatic protest and Carney's cautious diplomacy may be different in tone, but together they highlight the same truth. Canada is not folding under Trump's pressure. It is adapting, pushing back, and even turning symbolic losses into political wins. What was meant to weaken Canada has instead handed its leaders the chance to showcase defiance. And in that moment, as Crown Royal spilled onto the ground, it was Donald Trump who looked diminished.
All right, now, postal services worldwide are halting shipments to the United States.
An executive order signed by President Trump last month, goods coming in from abroad less than $800 will be slapped with country-specific tariff rates starting Friday.
It started with a single executive order. President Donald Trump abolished the de minimis exemption, the rule that had allowed parcels worth under $800 to enter the United States duty-free. By Friday, that exemption was gone. The impact was immediate. Postal services in Australia, India, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and across Europe suspended shipments to the United States. And the shock was felt in North America as well.
Now, as if Donald Trump's tariffs aren't inflicting enough pain, now Canadians running a small business are bracing for higher costs as the U.S. ends the exclusion from shipping fees.
Canada, America's closest trading partner, saw small businesses scrambling to keep sales flowing south of the border. Millions of parcels cross between the two countries each year, and the removal of this rule struck at the core of cross-border commerce. What was meant to protect America was in fact disrupting the continent's own supply chains.
The White House said the change was needed to protect American industries and block dangerous goods like fentanyl. But the first and hardest blow fell on American consumers and retailers.
The vast majority of my customer base is in the US. I can't pass this on to my customers. So as of last night, I've had to close my store completely.
Online sellers who rely on imports suddenly faced suspended shipments. Small shops that stocked foreign products prepared to raise prices or close their doors. For households, the costs arrive almost overnight. New duties are tied to country-specific rates ranging from 10 to 50%. NBC News reported they translate into flat fees of about $80 per item for countries with lower rates, $160 for mid-range, and $200 for the highest brackets. Analysts warned these changes could add up to $13 billion in extra consumer costs. Logistics firms also pulled back. DHL, one of the world's largest couriers, said it would stop accepting parcels bound for the United States until key details were clarified. Instead of securing America, the policy created delays, higher prices, and confusion at home.
While many countries froze shipments altogether, Canada chose a different approach. Canada Post confirmed it would not suspend service. Instead, it introduced a system to collect the new duties and transfer them to U.S. Customs. For Canadian parcels, most are now subject to a 35% tariff, reflecting the non-CUSMA rate set earlier in August. It is costly, but it preserves access to the market. This stood in sharp contrast with other partners. In Australia, small exporters halted sales to the United States because they could not guarantee what fees customers would face. In Europe, postal agencies admitted they needed more time and paused deliveries until new systems were built. Canada, by contrast, kept goods flowing. In the face of Trump's abrupt policy, Ottawa ensured businesses still had a path into their largest export destination.
The contrast is clear. Trump's decision was supposed to protect the United States, but it left American families and small shops paying more while major couriers suspended service. Canada, facing the same disruption, adapted quickly. By maintaining its postal link, it preserved market share while competitors in Europe and Asia were locked out. This is more than a technical fix. It reinforces Canada's role as a stable partner in North America. Prime Minister Mark Carney has argued that Canada will only sign agreements that serve its interests. That stance is reflected here. While others cut connections, Canada proved it could keep commerce moving under new rules. For the United States, the question is whether these tariffs strengthen or weaken the economy they were meant to defend. For Canada, the lesson is sharper. In the midst of global confusion, it found a way to turn crisis into opportunity, showing that resilience and pragmatism can be its greatest advantage.
Canada's counter tariffs on steel, aluminum, and autos will remain in place, but as of September 1st, tariffs on all the U.S. goods that are CUSMA compliant will be removed.
Canada has a lot of cards, their most important customer in critical industries.
In Washington and Ottawa, trade once again defines political power. President Donald Trump is pushing tariff pressure across key sectors, especially metals and autos. Canada has answered with a targeted adjustment. Starting September 1st, Ottawa will remove retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods that comply with the USMCA. Countermeasures on steel, aluminum, and automobiles remain in place. Some read this as a retreat. The better reading is a tactical reset designed to narrow the fight to the sectors that matter most.
Right. And look, the Prime Minister, I think I saw in the news conference, answered the question that because we believe there is an opportunity in the coming weeks to come to a bilateral deal with the United States that will put us in a better position than we're in this evening.
Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc insists Canada is not surrendering leverage. On the contrary, he stresses that Canada still has many cards to play. The reasoning is straightforward. Canada is the single largest customer for American goods in several critical industries. Every day, Canadian imports support U.S. farmers, energy suppliers, and manufacturers. Beyond trade flows, Canadian pension funds hold more than $1 trillion in American assets and could expand those investments by another $100 billion annually. On top of that, Canada's role in energy and minerals cannot be understated. The United States still relies on Canadian oil for nearly 4 million barrels per day and on Canadian uranium for over a quarter of its supply. These are not minor statistics. They are central to North America's economy. By narrowing its counter tariffs, Ottawa is not discarding leverage. It is consolidating around the tools that matter most, the ones Washington cannot easily ignore. This shift has triggered a debate. Critics argue that Canada is giving in too quickly, pointing to earlier concessions on the digital services tax, on defense commitments, and even on border enforcement. They worry that every concession emboldens Trump to ask for more. Yet a growing number of independent voices see it differently. Former finance advisors and political analysts describe the move as a good step, even a necessary one. Their reasoning is anchored in the lived experience of Canadian households and small businesses. Tariffs have raised costs on food, clothing, and basic imports. Removing them eases the squeeze on families already dealing with inflation. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business reported 2 years ago that retaliatory tariffs were hurting medium and small firms the most. Now, many of those same businesses may finally feel some relief. At the same time, the government has taken away an argument Trump often uses that Canada does not respect the very agreement it signed. With an executive order, Washington confirmed that USMCA-compliant goods would remain tariff-free. By aligning with that order, Ottawa strengthens its credibility rather than weakening it. The true test lies in the sectoral tariffs that remain untouched. American duties on steel and aluminum are hitting Quebec and Ontario especially hard, and the auto tariffs are already straining assembly lines. These are the industries where integration across North America is deepest. They are also the areas where Trump's position is toughest. For decades, he has argued that automobiles should be built inside the United States and nowhere else. That belief will make the auto file the most contentious of all. Still, Canada has not walked into the room empty-handed. Its energy exports underpin U.S. electricity grids and refineries. Its minerals are essential for new technologies. Its role in continental supply chains gives it a weight that no executive order can erase. By lifting tariffs on USMCA goods, Carney has lowered tensions at home, reduced costs for consumers, and cleared the table for focused negotiations on the sectors that matter most. Trump remains the dominant figure, but Canada has chosen patience and preparation over escalation. The contest is now set between Trump's pressure politics and Carney's strategic patience. The outcome will shape not only the next stage of US-Canada relations, but the foundation of the North American economy itself.